Now let's take a quick look at Selenium in action. We're not going to go through the setup just at this point yet, and we're not going to go over exactly what's going on or what's happening in this test, but I want to show you Selenium running, and I want to show you that protocol that we had talked about just so you have a deeper understanding of how Selenium works, and then we'll get into the API and how to set it up and use it in some of the later modules. So I've created a basic test here, and I'm going to go ahead and use the Chrome driver. And I did have to put my driver in a certain location, so I'm going to specify what that is. And you can see the basic syntax here. I'm using this driver.navigate, go to URL, so I'm going to go to google.com, and then I'm going to find an element named Q on that page, and I'm going to send some keys to that element. I'm going to send the words hello Selenium, and then I'm going to submit that element. So I'm going to do a submit, like clicking the submit button. And so that's actually going to perform a Google search. So let's go ahead and just run this here. And you can see a browser popped up, a new Chrome window. It went to Google and it typed hello Selenium and it did the search. So very quickly, very few lines of code to get this working. And that's the basics of Selenium WebDriver. And you can see it's running this Chrome server that we had talked about earlier. And we can actually look at the log for the server and see what commands were issued here. And if you see how this is working, it appears what happened was that this code here, when we went to this driver.navigate, that it directly accessed the web browser and manipulated it. But it didn't. What actually happened was it issued commands over the HTTP protocol to this server that was listening, and then that server was able to launch Chrome and do the actions and send back the result. So I'm going to open up this log file from that server, and you can see what exactly is going on here. So we had this Chrome driver.exe, and it got initialized, and we sent some JSON here. If you're familiar with this JSON format, you can see that basically the first command we issued to that server was some JSON that said what kind of browser we wanted. We wanted Chrome. We have some basic arguments here. We needed JavaScript to be enabled. We had the platform for Windows. And we'll see a little bit more how this comes into play when we start talking about Selenium Server. But then the next thing that it did was it launched Chrome, and then we sent a command. You see this command received here with a session, and we said what our session was, and this basically started up the browser and told us that everything was good. We got issued a session initially by this server, and this session is what we use to communicate that this instance of the browser is the one that we want to manipulate. So then we get a response back from here, and this is not so important what that response contains, but here's an interesting command here. So you can see that we've got a command that we said /session, we gave our session, and then our command is URL. And if you're familiar with REST, you can see that this is a REST-based type of API. And so we also sent some params, and so we sent the params URL equal to google.com. Now the server interpreted that response, and it went ahead and it moved us to google.com, and then it sent back a result, and it sent us back this result saying status 0, which means okay, and then nothing for our value. Then we sent another command saying element, and we used this using, set it equal to name, so we're looking for something by name. We set the value equal to Q, so that found that element. And then we issued back a response, or the server issued back a response to us, and it gave us our session ID. And in value here, it had this element, and it had this tag for us to be able to identify that element because it found it. Then we sent another command basically to that element. You can see that we specified our element here, and the parameters here was this hello Selenium, and so on and so forth. So you can see here, though, by looking at this log, what exactly is going on. We appear that we're running locally, but what's really happening is that when we're issuing these commands, we're actually going out and we're sending out these requests over HTTP, and we're getting these responses. And this may not seem important yet, but in the future, when we start looking at Selenium Server and we talk about distributing our tests, this kind of architecture is going to make doing that very easy.